Hey guys, so in today's video I have a book review and I'm going to be talking about the book Home by Dionne. I'm probably saying that wrong. But this book Home was part of my spookathon, and yeah, I finished it a couple of days ago, so I thought I would do a quick review. This is going to be a strange review for me because I am having a hard time kind of describing this book and how I feel about this book. It's one of those books where I read and I'm not entirely sure whether I liked it or whether I didn't like it. So I've had a couple of days to think about it and I still can't really make up my mind. I'm going to explain why. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story. It follows a woman called Helena, and it follows her life in two different times. So it begins off with her as an adult, you know, she's married, she has a family, and then it also goes back into her childhood and her upbringing, and she had a very unusual childhood. So she grew up in like this horrible little cabin, kind of in the middle of the marshland, and it was just her and her parents. She didn't interact with any other people. She didn't leave the marshlands. She just grew up just her and her family trying to survive off the land, you know, hunting and living off very minimal, you know, just whatever they could cook and find to eat really, and mending clothes and that kind of stuff. And it's not until she turns, I think it's 12 years old, she realises that her life is kind of not what it seems. So you find out that her mother is in fact a kidnapped victim. Her father kidnapped her mother when she was younger and brought her to this cabin and kind of kept her hostage in this cabin and treated her really horribly. And then obviously she was born and they became kind of a family there. But this whole time her mother was a captive. She was there against her will, and she doesn't find this out until obviously they escape. And now she's an adult, she is having trouble because her father has escaped from prison, and she's kind of made it her mission to track her father down so that she can put him back into prison. So it sounded like it was going to be like this big exciting thriller, and even like on the back, you know, it has you know, there's a little quote here by Karen Slaughter, who's an author that I really like. It says, gloriously written, eerie suspense. I agree, it was very well written. I found that sometimes when I read books, I don't like books that are from like from two different characters or from different time zones. I feel like sometimes it can be a bit jarring unless it's done really well. And this is one of these books that does it really well. I found that as it jumped back and forth between her as an adult and her as a child, the storytelling was just seamless. It worked really, really well. It just worked so good for the story. It kind of did it. It wasn't like chapter by chapter. It just kind of flowed in and out of memories of her being a child, like her kind of reminiscing on what happened. And you get kind of absorbed into that story, but then it comes back to her being an adult hunting her father. It was just written it flowed really well. So I did really like the writing style. I found it very easy to pick up and just read a few chapters each day. So I will definitely be looking out for more by this author, which is why it's so difficult for me, because I liked the writing style and the story was interesting. My main issue with this book is I didn't really like Helena. And the reason for that being, throughout this entire book, and this is what I feel like took the suspense away for me, she talks about her father in a very loving way. So she didn't obviously realise her mother was captive until, like I said, they left, and she realised what was going on. But throughout the entire book, she is just doubting her mother's stories. She constantly says how much she loves her father and how much she knows, okay, she acknowledges what he's done is not a good thing, and yet she still loves him and doesn't wish him any harm, and has so much praise for him. It says how much she loves the marshland and how she loved her growing up. But then when she tells stories of her childhood, he was really horrible to her in some instances. Yeah, he was nice to her sometimes and he taught her a lot of cool skills, but he treated her mother horribly. And even as a child, she's really horrible to her mother. She's really unappreciative of her. She really just doesn't have that much of a connection with her mother. And obviously her mother would have struggled to bond with her because, you know, obviously her daughter was born out of horrible circumstances. But it was just, the way she spoke about her mother just really annoyed me. And it wasn't until the last very few chapters where she kind of acknowledges that she understands more of how her mother was, because she's now a mother, you know, she has 2 daughters, and how difficult it would have been for her mum. But it just wasn't enough, because it wasn't throughout the story. I couldn't understand in my mind, okay, yeah, your dad might have been nice to you whilst growing up, but surely you could see how badly he treated your mother, and he did horrible things to her as well. He had some horrible punishments, and yet she still kind of looked up to him. I just don't feel like that was realistic. I feel like if you were really in that situation as a child, you would not still have these loving feelings for your father. And so that just kind of took the whole her hunting him down, it kind of took the whole thriller aspect out of it, even though he's still a very dangerous man and she is trying to capture him to put him back into prison. But yeah, it didn't feel like, there wasn't that urgency that I often feel thrillers need to keep them going. I was purely reading it because I was interested in this story, which kind of says something about the writing style, that it was able to keep me interested even though I didn't feel it was that suspenseful. So yeah, this is why I have such mixed feelings about it. I loved the writing style and the story was interesting, but I just really didn't connect with Helena. I found some of the things she said and did a bit off, and I understand being brought up in a weird, you know, being brought up in a difficult living situation. But I mean, when she was a child, it wasn't difficult for her. She really enjoyed it. So I don't understand, but then I don't understand how you could still feel love for a man who did such awful things and treated you quite badly at times. I just don't feel like it was realistic. I feel like I would have been much more brutal in trying to hunt him down and been a lot more harsh in my view of him if I was in her shoes. And especially becoming a mother and, you know, a wife yourself, then comparing yourself to your mother. Surely you'd have, you know, a lot more feelings for your mother. But the mother's not in this book. She passes away early on, you find out. So it's just like her, you never get the mother's perspective on anything. It's just her looking back on her mother's life and explaining what happened and, you know, how her mother was towards her. So yeah, this is a tricky book for me to rate. I don't know what I'm going to rate it as on Goodreads. I'm kind of hovering around the 3-star mark, 3 out of 5. But then I did really enjoy the writing. It's kind of wanting me to put it up to a 4, but then if I didn't like the main character, I don't know what to do. It's a tricky one. I would say if you are interested in kind of like kidnapping or isolation kind of stories, definitely give this a go. It has some really nice descriptions of the marshlands, and how they survived was really interesting. So the father taught her how to track and hunt animals and set traps, you know, how to use a knife, all these kinds of things, how to shoot, and all those chapters are really interesting. But yeah, I just felt like her perspective was a little bit off. But I don't know, I haven't read too many kidnapping stories. I'd be interested to read a few more to hear, you know, what other authors, or even real life ones, that would be interesting to see how people process things in their mind. But yeah, I just found it a little bit annoying the way she was so unsympathetic towards her mother. It just made me really annoyed at her. I was like, why can't you see he's such a horrible person? I mean, she knows he's a horrible person because she says he does really bad things, and she knows they're bad things when he does them, and yet she still has this love for him. And I'm like, how can you sympathise with this man who is such a huge narcissist and so does such horrible things to the people around him? Like, it's just not okay, and it's like she's trying to justify it in her mind, his actions, the way she describes some of the things he does and about his upbringing and stuff, and it's just like, no, this guy was just a nutter. And I couldn't believe as an adult she still had love for him, even throughout everything that he's done. But the ending is good. Like I said, when she's hunting him, that's interesting. I preferred reading more about her childhood than the present, because like I said, the present storyline, there wasn't much urgency to it as she was hunting him. I was just kind of like quickly reading those bits as fast as I could so I could get back to her childhood, until the two stories kind of meet up to her, you know, what happens when they leave the marsh, and how she is to begin her new life in the outside world. So yeah, it was an interesting one. I don't know if anyone else has read this book, always interested in reading this book, then please let me know down below. On Goodreads, I think a majority of the reviews were good. I think there was a few people who felt the same as me. I don't know what my review on Goodreads is going to be. I'm still kind of like thinking about it in my mind. It is one of those books that has you thinking afterwards, which I like. I've done that with a few books I've read at the beginning of this year, specifically the books by Jessie Burton, The Miniaturist and The Muse. They were kind of along the same vein as this one, where I loved the writing styles and the stories, but there was just something a little bit off about them, off about the characters, off about the story. But I've just picked up her third book, so obviously I didn't, you know, dislike them that much. I kind of feel that about this author. I like the writing style enough that I would be really interested in trying some of her other writings to see, you know, because the only problem I had was the character Helena, which was the main character. But I also have said in the past, I don't have to like a main character to enjoy a story, which is also true. So this is really tricky for me. I think it was just like a bit of a meh kind of book. Like, I just didn't know how to feel about it. It's been 2 days and I still don't really know my feelings on this book. I still don't know what I'm going to rate it. I'll probably have to think about it a little bit more. I don't think I would reread this book, because I think once you've read it, I don't really feel the need to reread it. Because once you know the story, that's kind of it, especially with her childhood, once you know all of that, which is the most interesting part, and also you know the outcome. So it's not going to be a reread for me, so I'll probably end up giving it away at some point. But yeah, it's a thinker. It's one to think about. I would like to know other people's opinions. If anyone has any good kidnapping story recommendations, then let me know, because it's a very interesting subject. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I feel like this has been a really bizarre review because I didn't really know where I was going with it. I just wanted to share my thoughts, and my thoughts are, I'm glad I read it. I would recommend it to people actually, because I think it's an interesting one. I would be interested to see what other people's views are on this book. But yeah, mixed feelings. That's my review. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to stop rambling on, and yeah, I'm going to move on to my other books. I've read quite a big chunk of Haunted now, which I mentioned, which was another book in my Spookathon book pile, and I'm getting much more into that because I was struggling with that one to begin with, because it's a bunch of jumbled up stories kind of mashed together. But I'm getting more into it now, so I should hopefully have a review of that up fairly soon. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to stop rambling. That's everything I have to say. So as always, thank you for watching, and until next time, bye guys.